I would have said were more like 2% average rather than 3%. Okay, so what anomalies are you going to see? Well, one we saw very definitely is one of their keyword targets was a term which was revision and assessment tools. And they got within 2 months to first position for that, and there just was no traffic. There was nothing in that impressions column, okay? And if that's the case, you've got no choice but to just junk the keyword. You've been misled by the data, okay, as we were in that case. The second possible scenario is that you get the rankings and people don't then click through from the search results to your site. Okay, say you were in first position expecting at least 40% and you were getting 15% would be a sort of typical scenario. And there are two options there. One is definitely that you've got a sort of unappealing combination of page title and description, and you should try to improve those to see if it affects the click-through rate. But equally, it's quite possible that you've got your relevance wrong, okay, and that the term doesn't mean the same thing to your searchers as it means to you. And often you've just got the wrong age group of market, or something of that nature. Okay, so if I go back to that one, you'll see, you probably can't see actually, but Maths Game's the top one there. 60,500 impressions, and it's got position 7 point something, 2% click-through, 1,000 clicks, which is quite acceptable. The term below it, primary resources, which isn't a keyword target of theirs, exactly the same number of impressions, but only 58 visits to the site, 0% click-through rate, and that's definitely a sort of relevance issue, I think. And then the third possible scenario is that you get a normal click-through rate to the site, but then when people arrive at the site, something unpleasant happens. So you get either very high bounce rates or very low conversions, short stays with very few page views, that sort of thing. And in their case, they got the term brain games as a target, and the bounce rate for that was 77%, okay? And I think it was a sort of mismatch in expectation, because they're primary school age children, their games, and a lot of adults are looking for sort of Sudoku and other type things. And when we did change the keyword to brain games for kids, okay, the traffic is only about half as much, but the click-through rate dropped to below 30%, which is reasonably acceptable on their site, which is very skewed because it's a sort of subscription one. So their overall bounce rate is 12%, okay, but in terms of sort of non-people going to log in, 30% is about sort of typical bounce, I would have said. Okay. So those are the sort of normal processes that we hope people will at least incorporate some of the ideas into their sort of SEO practice. Things do go wrong. As I say, we've had 3 fairly serious disasters spread amongst just 2 clients in the last 6 months alone. Okay, and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, you know, everything's fine on Friday, and you come into work on Monday morning, and their rankings have gone from top 10 to, you know, 400 plus. Okay, something very rapidly deteriorating in those circumstances. Okay, and I want people really just to think about what thoughts you should be having, what questions you should be answering, rather than saying, oh yes, I think it's, you know, probably X, Y, or Z. And the first thing to ask yourself is it just my site that's affected, or is it something that lots of other people are seeing, turbulence, turmoil? And the best way to find that out is to go to one of the SEO forums, something like SEO Shop or Digital Point or Search Engine Watch, and just see what everyone's saying. Because if everyone's suffering really unstable rankings, they will be on there chattering about it like mad, okay? If they're not, and it's just you, you got to start to think, well, it's probably more likely an internal issue with the site rather than a search engine thing. Okay. You need to really think as well about whether your rankings alone whether your rankings and traffic have dropped in sort of harmony, or you do sometimes get strange situations where your rankings are preserved, but your traffic drops dramatically. And in that second instance, if your rankings are still there, but the traffic's fallen away, it often says something about the presentation of your site in the results. And one of the disasters we went through was a company had problems with its load sharing on its servers, and lots of secure versions of pages got into the index. Okay, so HTTPS before the listings. That ordinarily wouldn't have a huge impact. The rankings don't fall because of that alone. But what happened was they'd been indexed without the www, and their SSL certificate only covered the www subdomain. So someone came across the results, clicked on it, and got to that awful screen which says there isn't a valid SSL certificate for this site, and then the only thing there is a button which says get me out of here. Okay, so their rankings were still there, but traffic down there. Okay, so that's one possible scenario. Okay, the next two really important questions you need to ask yourself or others in the organisation are what changes have been made to the site in the preceding days or weeks that could possibly have caused this situation. Okay, and the second question, which needs to be put quite tactfully, is has anyone done anything that might have got us banned in the search engine? Okay, and one of the other disasters that we encountered involved a site, and it was moved from one server to another server on a Friday. Okay, and the problem that occurred was the new server that it went to had been set up for GeoIP. Now the site only served the UK market, and do people know about GeoIP? It's involved with serving different content to people in different locations. So their other sites have products for the Americas and Europe and the UK. This one didn't. And so what happened was when you looked at the site from the UK, everything was fine because the products were loading okay. When Googlebot visited the site from the US, there wasn't anything set up in the database, and the whole thing fell to pieces, and you got a 404 error message. Okay. They moved the site on Friday. The server administrator then set off on a 10-day holiday abroad, and come Monday morning, Google Webmaster Tools was showing them 30,000 server errors of unfound pages, and their sales had halved by Monday. And it took quite a long time to actually sort out what was going wrong, partly because the person who made the move wasn't around to ask, but also because we sat in their offices here, and the pages were there, and everything was fine. There is a useful little tool within Webmaster Tools which says View as Googlebot. Okay, and you put a URL into that, and then you can view what Googlebot is seeing, and that's what eventually uncovered it, because you looked at a page and there was nothing there, or not everything there that should have been, whereas the page we were seeing from the UK was absolutely fine. Okay, the other thing Webmaster Tools will tell you is if you've got malware issues, if your site's been hacked, it will ordinarily tell you if you've been banned as well, which is useful, and that's when you have to get down on bended knee and ask for a re-inclusion request and follow the usual formula of saying we had a student let loose in the building who worked on the site over the summer and has done some really disastrously unethical things, and it will never happen again. Okay.